Jabihari Gopi Jana Baba Shidibare Bhari Gopi Jana Balabha Gibaradhari Suranandana Sudadana Ranjana Jashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada, Jai. Jai. Drink of water here. Have a good one on my shirt. Namam Vishnuvadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimade Vedanta Swami Name Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nivasesha Shunyavadi Vaspapade Shatayini. So it's text. Oh, hey Katja, can you you know how to put the glasses on, Prabhu?
Yeah.
And the book, I think it's on, was it 46 or 47?
47.
Okay. All right, here we go. Apapeshu Swa Prityeshu
Briteshu
Valina pakva
balena pakva
buddhina apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tad bhagavan papam kritam tat bhagavan sarvatma shantam arhati sarvatma shantum arhati apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tat bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tat bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tat bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati. Okay, someone else please. Apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tad bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati. Go ahead. You go.
Okay. Apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tad bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tad bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tat bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati.
That's okay. I'm invisible sometimes.
apapeshu swabhriteshu balena pakva buddhina papam kritam tat bhagavan sarvatma shantum arhati.
Okay, so now we'll go to the word for word. Isn't it? I don't see. Oh, there it is. It's all good. Apapeshu. Unto one who is completely free from all sins.
Unto one who is completely free from all sins.
Swabhriteshu. Unto one who is subordinate and deserves to be protected.
Unto one who is subordinate and deserves to be protected.
Isn't that everyone?
Yes.
Everyone. We're all subordinate. Everyone should be protected. So, balena, by a child.
By a child.
Apakva, who is immature.
who's immature,
Buddhina,
buddhina,
intelligence,
by intelligence,
papam, sinful act,
sinful act,
kritam,
kritam,
has been done,
tat
bhagavan,
bhagavan,
therefore the personality of Godhead,
therefore the personality of Godhead,
sarva atma, one
Sarva-atma,
who is all pervading,
one who is all-pervading,
chantum,
Tantum,
just to pardon, arhati,
arhati, deserve.
Okay, now we can get started. Krishna Shwaya Mavapriya. I was stalling till you got here.
Thank you.
I actually thought it was your day today, so...
You thought my day?
Yeah, because I missed yesterday because I wasn't feeling well. And then I just sort of thought, well, I don't know why. I was so sick, I lost that day, and I just thought today was... So, and it's happening more and more. It's happening more and more as time takes along. Okay, so I'm going to say, then you say. Then the Rishi prayed.
Then the Rishi prayed
to the all-pervading personality of Godhead.
To the all-pervading personality of Godhead.
To pardon his immature boy.
To pardon his immature boy.
Who had no intelligence.
Who had no intelligence.
And who committed the great sin. Of cursing a person. Who was completely free from all sins.
Who was completely free from all sins.
Who was subordinate.
And
who deserved to be protected.
So
the translation is, then the Rishi prayed to the all-pervading personality of Godhead to pardon his immature boy, who had no intelligence, and who committed the great sin of cursing a person who was completely free from all sins, who was subordinate, and who deserved to be protected. You know, actually, the first thing that sort of jumps out at me is that they're saying that Maharaj Pariksit, who's the emperor of the world, is subordinate. Because that's the Brahmanas are... That's the story of Vishwamrita and... what was the other...
Vasishtha?
Vasishtha, yeah. Vasishtha was... And Vishwamrita was the emperor of the world. And there was a battle over this Surabi cow that Vasishtha had. And Vishwamrita had to have it, but he realized that his Kshatriya power wasn't as powerful as the mode of goodness, the Brahman power. So he went through many, many years of severe austerities, meditations, achieved a level of success, but then he squandered it. And then he had to start over again. And this happened 3 times. But then finally, in the end, he became so qualified. He was then the military guru for none other than Ramachandra and Lakshmana.
Oh, yeah.
He came and broke Dasarath's heart. He said, now it's time for your boys to come with me. And then he helped defeat Rakshasa and his sister. And so the story begins. He gave them all these weapons, taught them how to use these weapons. But that's it. It's an interesting thing that Vishwamrita, the point is that he underwent the austerities to become as powerful as Vasishtha. And he was a powerful Kshatriya, but he realized that the power of the Brahmins was strong. So he undergoes it, and this is a mature person, former emperor of the world, and yet he misuses it. He gets, so it's like, in a sense, there's a kind of immaturity. You know, there's, and then he does it again. He goes through another 60,000 years of austerity and meditation. Again, One time it's because of revenge. Another time it had to do with being seduced by a beautiful apsara. The third time, I think it was...
I think a bird pooped on his head or something. He touched the bird. Something so simple and silly like that.
Well, I don't know, but I don't remember that. But I think there was two involved, but they were slightly different. But there were two involving women, and one had to do with false pride and revenge. Because there was this person that wanted, he wanted to ascend. I don't remember the personality's name. He wanted to ascend to the heavenly planet by building like a Tower of Babel. And Indra saying, "What? You can't do this. You can't just, fly to the moon. Go to the heavenly planets. You have to have your proper immigration and visa. It's illegal. We're building a wall."
That's fake news.
It's not fake, it's Shastra. That's literally what happened. Indra saying, "Hey, what's going on here? You got to stop this, Vashishta." And Vishwamitra realizes, this is, because the person had asked Vashishta to, after he had tried to climb to the heavens without any qualification, foregoing all of the rituals, to qualify themselves, he didn't get the proper, immigration papers and visa papers, and he tried to just, cross the border into heaven. And Indra says, "You got to stop this." And the person tried to get Vashishta to agree to it, and Vashishta backed up Indra. So then he went to Vishwamitra, and Vishwamitra was still angry at Vashishta for what he had destroyed his entire army, his sons, I think. Maybe he left some sons to rule the kingdom. But, so he wanted to show off. And it became a big problem. And then, I don't remember the personality's name, but in order to resolve it, because Vishwamitra had the ability to do it, but he couldn't bring him to the heavenly planet of Indra, he created another galaxy for him in the southern part of the universe, which is like a heavenly place, but it's not legitimate. And I don't know. So there are ways around breaking the immigration laws. You can do it if you want. So, but because of that, Vishwamitra lost his power again, and so then he had to start over again for another 10,000 or 60,000 years, and then he became seduced by a woman, so on and so forth. Anyway, I didn't make the purport yet, but it's been on my mind that the purport that Yogendra Prabhu read on his last class, which would have been Friday, in the purport it says, "A government of the people, for the people, by the people." Okay, that was written by Prabhupada in India in the 1950s, 1960s, early
60s.
Yeah, maybe the 50s or early 60s, and yet everyone knows that's part of our Declaration or Constitution. It's either in the Declaration of Independence or it's in the Constitution. So that shows you, and he didn't know. He knew he had to preach in the West, but he didn't necessarily know where that West was. But obviously, he was thinking about America already. He used that expression, which was applicable to the American people. And I found that sort of a foreshadowing of, in literature, there's what they call foreshadowing, that, you see an event that's going to later on develop down the road, and it manifests itself. The Prabhupada is preaching, writing a purport. He's in India, and he uses of the people, for the people, by the people. That speaks to Americans. But he wasn't just preaching to Americans, obviously, but that was the first place he came, and it's the first place that really got him kick-started. Anyway, I'm sorry, it was just...
So whose statement is this? For the people, by the people?
Of the people, it's probably Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
I thought it was Abraham Lincoln, but I don't know if he was.
No. This is Thomas Jefferson. No. Well, in the course of human events, and becomes self-evident. You have to. All men are created equal. So we therefore declare, because they're trying to give a legitimate reason to break from. They were colonies. They had legal contracts with England or France, depending on where they were in the North American area. They had contracts to be here. And so they didn't own the land, but neither did the English or the French. As a matter of fact, you might say we were immigrants. And the Indians didn't decide to build a wall. They kind of helped us out in the beginning. Anyway, so it's kind of an interesting thing that Prabhupada did that. I just found it interesting when you were reading it that day. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Everyone is responsible for his own action, either pious or sinful. Rishi Samika could foresee that his son had committed a great sin by cursing Maharaj Pariksit, who deserved to be protected by the Brahmanas. For he was a pious ruler and completely free from all sins because of his being a first-class devotee of the Lord. When an offense is done unto the devotee of the Lord, it is very difficult to overcome the reaction. The Brahmanas, being at the head of the social orders, are meant to give protection to their subordinates and not to curse them. Of course, we do know examples of that, like in the case of King Vena. The Brahmanas, they didn't actually curse him, they just said, "Kill him!" And by the sound of their words, he left his body. He was claiming to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all the demigods are his parts and parcels. And you should offer sacrifices not to please Vishnu, but to please the king. And the Brahmanas couldn't stand it. They just went, "Kill him!" And they died. I mean, maybe they said it more nicely than that. But it was, huh? No, I went out that way. I went out that way. And you're not a him. I'm sorry.
The energy came this way.
I don't know my own strength.
Did you touch your Brahmana thread while
but I can't even do it. I can't break my throat, so don't worry. I have no potency. Where was I? So there are occasions when a Brahmana may furiously curse a subordinate Kshatriya or Vaishya, etc. But in the case of Maharaj Pariksit, there were no grounds, as already explained. Of course, I did read in the 12th canto that there was one Brahmana who was a minister. It was the first time in history, in Vedic history, and this was in the early, after Maharaj Pariksit, and he assassinated. He had the king assassinated and put his son in charge of the kingdom. It's mentioned by Sukadeva Goswami in the 12th canto. There are occasions when a Brahmana may furiously curse a subordinate Kshatriya or Vaishya, etc. But in the case of Maharaj Pariksit, there were no grounds, as already explained. The foolish boy had done it out of sheer vanity, and being a Brahmana's son, and thus he became liable to be punished by the law of God. The Lord never forgives a person who condemns his pure devotee. Therefore, by cursing a king, the foolish Shringi had committed not only a sin, but also the greatest offense. That's called the mad elephant offense. And we know what Chaitanya told the Dvaitacharya. Told Mother Sachi that she had criticized the Dvaitacharya because she thought that he was responsible for her son taking sannyas. And Lord Chaitanya said, you must immediately go and get forgiveness from a Dvaitacharya. Otherwise you will never taste the fruits of pure love of Godhead. And that's his own mother. And there, Prabhupada says the first-class devotee. You may be first-class devotee, and you criticize the third-class devotee, and you commit a Vaishnava aparadha. You will not make any spiritual advancement. You will fall down. The Lord never forgives a person who condemns his pure devotee. Therefore, by cursing a king, the foolish Shringi committed not only a sin, but also the greatest offense. Therefore, the Rishi could foresee that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead could save his boy from his sinful act. He therefore directly prayed for pardon from the Supreme Lord, who alone can undo a thing which is impossible to change. The appeal was made in the name of a foolish boy who had developed no intelligence at all. Although Krishna says that when Durvasa Muni cursed Ambarish, Krishna said, I can't do anything. You have to get Ambarish's. Because Durvasa Muni is not an immature boy. A question may be raised herein that since it was the desire of the Lord that Parikshit Maharaj be put into that awkward position as so that he might be delivered from material existence, then why was a Brahmana's son made responsible for this offensive act? The answer is that the offensive act was performed by a child only so that he could be excused very easily. And thus the prayer of the father was accepted. But if the question is raised why the Brahmana community as a whole was made responsible for allowing Kali into the world affairs, the answer is given in the Varaha Purana, that the demons who acted inimically toward the personality of Godhead but were not killed by the Lord were allowed to take birth in the families of Brahmanas to take advantage of the age of Kali. The all-merciful Lord gave them a chance to have their births in the families of pious Brahmanas so that they could progress toward salvation. But the demons, instead of utilizing the good opportunity, misused the Brahminical culture due to being puffed up by their vanity of becoming Brahmanas. The typical example is the son of Samika Rishi, and all the foolish sons of Brahmanas are warned hereby not to become a foolish Shringi, and be always on guard against the demonic qualities which they had in their previous births. The foolish boy was, of course, excused by the Lord, but others who may not have a father like Samika Rishi will be put into great difficulty if they misuse the advantages obtained by the birth in a Brahmana family. Then the Rishi prayed to the all-pervading personality of God to pardon his immature boy, who had no intelligence and who committed the great sin of cursing a person who was completely free from all sins, who was subordinate, and who deserved to be protected. Om Gyanatimaranda
Ranjana Shalakaya Chakshuramitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Sometimes the question would be asked when Prabhupada was with us the marker. Oh, good, thanks. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. So, the question would be asked, well, if India is the land of Krishna, why is it that America appears, and America, where all Malechas and Yavanas are meat eaters, why do we seem to have a more opulent lifestyle? Why do we seem to be in a better position? And India is struggling, because India is not poor. And the first thing I noticed when I went to India in 1975, a sign of opulence is good fertile land. And at that time, Mayapur was just the guest house and the wall. There was no long building. We were living in the wall. And those rooms weren't even finished. And but you saw all these men working their fields with mainly they had water buffalo, but there was a couple that had oxen. And it was either rice or wheat. And I'm thinking, this land, this place is so opulent. Look at this, just as far as the eye can see, is really nice green wheat coming up and rice fields. How is it that they say that India's a poor, starving nation? I mean, yeah, there's places in like you go into Calcutta and other places, there's slums and things, but there's slums in America. There are parts of Calcutta that reminded me of parts of New York. I mean, it wasn't, this, and. But in any case, the point is, like Prabhupada always used to say, everything tastes good in America. The roads here are like velvet, whereas the roads in India are very bumpy. Of course, now things have improved, I'm sure, but, and the famous thing is that when you're, I think they've improved it, but when you're driving from the airport to my airport, you got a one-lane road. And whoever has the loudest, you got a bus and a truck and a car, and they're coming at each other. And whoever has the loudest horn, and they're going full speed, all loud. And it's like a game of chicken. You're sitting there like this, white knuckle the whole way, It's really like, who's going to back down? So in America, though, we have these nice broad, and we get mad because we have traffic jams and things like that. But it's all relative. So devotees would sometimes ask, why, if we're so fallen, and in India, everyone knows, you can see on every store Govinda's laundry, Krishna's jewelry, whatever. So how come? How come they seem to be suffering and we seem to be like a heavenly planet compared to that? And Prabhupada said that if a small child comes up to you, a young child, say 3, 4 years old, and kicks you in the ankle, you just think, oh, that's adorable. It's cute. No problem. You don't think it's a big deal. But maybe you should be corrected. You don't kick people. No, that's not good. But if he's 13, 15 years old, he kicks you in the ankle, he gets a different reaction. So the point is that America's a new, young place. We're naive and ignorant. We're innocent. And we don't know the Vedic rules. We didn't, as a matter of fact, before Prabhupada, people came with the Bhagavad Gita, but they were giving all these gobbledygosh, just nonsense speculation. You are God, I am God, we are all God. There was one, I think it was Vivekananda, says, why are you, giving God all this praise? You've done the work. And this is the kind of stuff that was coming over, and they weren't getting the truth. And until Prabhupada came. So you can say that they were like Shringi, they were immature. And that was Prabhupada's answer in those days. And I remember on 2 occasions when I was in India, once was in Calcutta, right outside the Calcutta temple. Is it still on Albert Road? And so right outside that is a little park. The British, that was their crown jewel. Calcutta was like, you can see how it's laid out. It may not look like that now, but they have you can see the parts, the remnants, and how it was designed. And there's a nice park right in front of the Calcutta temple, and we were sitting there, and we had our dhotis laid out on the grass. And a young student came up. And this also happened in Juhu. I was on the beach with my wife and son. But the story is that we're sitting there chanting, and we engage in a conversation with this young man. He's a student, like 20 years old. And we're telling him that somewhere or other the conversation comes around, that we're from America, and there's crime in America. And there's poverty in America. And he literally would and this happened both times, they would put their hands over their ears as if they were hearing blasphemy against Vaikuntha. they had been told by missionaries from the West that there was no crime in America because they're all perfect Christians and there's no poverty. I mean, many Indian Indian immigrants that I've met tell me one of the biggest shock to them is that the first time someone in America in a city came up to them and asked them for money. So, what are you asking me for? They think everybody's like a Rockefeller. I'm from India. You're asking me for money? So there's a lot of misinformation about that. But so in that case, this is the what Shringi here is the example is that they're saying that Shringi was immature and he didn't know better. But he should, why should he have been given? It's like even today in our legal system, at what point do you charge someone with serious crimes, like whether it's burglary or even using a weapon, and maybe even could be an accidental homicide, or could actually just really get mad and pick up a gun and shoot someone. At what age do you are they considered responsible? And then there's the whole question of whether or not what's the environment they grew up in, what is their emotional state, do they have some chemical imbalance, so many things like that. So age is a factor, and immaturity is a factor as well. So there's that. But then the mercy of the Lord is so all-pervading that in this age you have the example of people like Jagai Madai. They were certainly old enough to know better. They were Brahmins, right? They were Brahmins, yeah. And they were really debauch. They were drunkards. They were very respected and responsible landlords. They were using their position to exploit sexual favors. They were drinking, intoxicated. They were very, not very, their business dealings weren't very honest. And they were misusing their position. And to the point when Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, as Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur approached them to take to the chanting of Hare Krishna, one of them, I can't remember which one it was, hit Lord Nityananda with a pot. And, there was bleeding. And when Lord Chaitanya heard of this, he comes on the scene with his, ready to call on the Shuddhasan Chakra, and Lord Nityananda throws himself at his feet and says, no, Lord, not in this age. In this age, you have come to kill the demonic spirit, not to kill the demons. Because in this age, if you kill a demon, one demon, you get 5 more. Then those 5 create another 10. And it goes on exponentially like that. I mean, in a sense, it's like this whole war on terrorism. I don't know the solution. I mean, obviously, ultimately, idealistically, it's Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement. But obviously, just killing terrorists only creates more terrorists on either side. It's a vicious cycle. I know from my experience of growing up in the family of descendants from Ireland, that thing between the Catholics and the Protestants, it will never stop. I mean, it's too deep. It's about to flare up again, probably, because of the Brexit thing. If that goes through, then they're going to partition the city again, and that they'll start. I heard one fellow say that as soon as you put up a booth with a custom agent at that point between the Catholics and the Protestant side of the city, there'll be gunfire. So it's that you don't end it because there's too much bitterness. But in this case, the point I wanted to make is not to get off into that kind of a tangent, you kill one, you create more. But that Jagai and Madai weren't immature. They were knowledgeable, but they got mercy because they surrendered to Lord Chaitanya and they begged for forgiveness. And that's what Srila Prabhupada said, that Lord Krishna came at the end of the Bhagavad Gita and said, Sarvadhamam parityajya mamekam saranam bhaja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo moksha-yashyami ma sucha. You just surrender unto me. You have no fear. I will give you protection. Just give up all other religious, rituals and considerations. Surrender to me. And then in the next verse he says something to the effect, like the previous. It's one of the two verses that's pretty much repeated. And it's like Manmana Bhagavad Lajo Majati Man Namaskuru. Although that is not exactly stated that way, but engage your mind in always thinking of me and bowing down to me, offering service to me. So the mercy in this age, there's no consideration about maturity or immaturity. You just have to be submissive and willing to accept it. But it also says that in this age, only those persons who are endowed with sufficient intelligence understand that this process of Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the process. Only those people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence. An endowment means a gift. It's a gift. It's not easy. And when I see our new bhaktins, it's so enlivening. And I know they have this gift. They've been given a gift. It's not everybody gets that gift. They immediately, they read it, they hear it, they get it. They got it. And we're very fortunate that they have come. Lord Chaitanya has sent them to us here, and we hope and pray that they'll make nice advancement and we can assist them in that. Because it's a precious thing, this little kripa, this little plant. It's like we just planted a seed. But Lord Chaitanya planted this seed in the hearts of these two young devotees. And that seed has to be protected because weeds will grow up along with it. And it's our business to try to help them. And but we're so grateful that they're here. But you can see, it's not everybody that gets, out of many, there could be 1,000 people that you're preaching to, and maybe just one will get that. But that's just like Prabhupada used to use the example. If you're going door to door selling diamonds, you're not going to get a lot of customers. But the customers you got are quality. So it's a rare gift, and to understand, to have the intelligence to understand that this is the process, and that this material world is not a place of happiness. It is a place of suffering. Unless you understand that you're suffering, you can't really preach to somebody. They think they're happy. Like when you had a business, and when people come in, you ask them how they are, and they go, "I'm great." Yeah, okay, all right, I believe you. Not. When you're trying to oversell it, you know what I mean? It's not real. How great are you? How great? No, let's get down to it. How's your teeth? How's that old football injury? How's your relationship? And how you're treated at work, and on and on and on. What do you think about the government? And so there is suffering in this material world, and this is the solution, this Hare Krishna mantra. Now, another example that comes to mind along these lines is the story of Ajamil. And that's an interesting story because it almost seems like Ajamil might be from a previous Kali Yuga, because he's dying at the age of 88. And so that would indicate maybe not a Dwapara Yuga, but who knows. In any case, the point is, it doesn't matter what age or anything like that. But he was trained as a Brahmana, but then at a very young age, he happened to see this woman who's referred to as a prostitute with a man, and he becomes attracted to that. And the long and the short of it is, he ends up marrying that particular woman who's a prostitute. But what does that mean? Is she a prostitute? I mean, I've meditated that it's not like in the terms of like the way we normally think of streetwalkers or something like that. I mean, she was probably like a Sudrani, and she was maybe even just being taken advantage of by some rich landlord, and they refer to her as a prostitute. But he made an honest woman out of her. But her association didn't help his spiritual life, and he completely forgot his training as a Brahmin. But because he was immature at the time of the fall down, Krishna made some special arrangements for him. And his 10th son, I think it was, he had 10 sons, the youngest was Narayan. So he's dying, and he's thinking about that son because he's the youngest boy. And so he says the name Narayan, thinking of the boy. But because he says Narayan, the Yamadutas are on the way, but the Vishnu Dutas come to protect him. So, my point is that even though he, lived an entire life, it was in a sense an accidental fall down of an immature Brahmin. And that shows you the mercy of the Lord. The mercies, Krishna's not interested in, punishments. He's not really enjoying the fact that we're here. He'd rather have us come home. And he doesn't want to punish us. So he looks for every avenue to give us mercy. And we should be very fortunate at this time to be experiencing the most munificent form of mercy, which is the Sankirtan movement. I guess I could just leave it there. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? Yes, person?
When you were mentioning about how we should be very careful not to offend devotees, what I was reminded of, because I'm reading in the 4th canto about Dhruva Maharaj and how he was insulted by Suruchi, and how later on it was, I remember Prabhu saying, because of that offense, her son had to be killed in the forest while going hunting, and her herself had to be...
she died in a forest fire.
Forest fire. Yes, so that's my point of realization, how we have to be very, very, very careful.
But Dhruva was really angry at those persons who killed him, and he went a little overboard.
Yeah, but then he got the mercy of the Lord.
He did. And Swayambhuva Manu, who was his grandfather, I think, came and told him, I know you're angry and you have a reason, but there was only one person who killed your brother, not, 100,000. And
well, they all did attack him.
Yeah, and then
they all attacked him. Yeah.
That's how it's going on now. That so many thousands and thousands of innocent people are being killed in these wars that are happening.
Yeah.
Even though they don't have anything to do with it, but still because of the nature of the warfare that they're doing.
Right.
Being killed.
But he didn't hold any grudges against his stepmother or his father once he had, achieved perfection in his austerities and had, But yeah, he overreacted there, and then there's some very good instructions about not becoming overtaken by anger, Because, you know, there's a lot of times to be really angry about something and, you know, and really want to give it to the other side. But, and then Kuvera, who's the sort of the main person, who the leader of that, I think they're the yakshas. I think they're called yakshas, and he's the treasurer of the heavenly planets, and he controls all the wealth. And he forgave Dhruva for, but it's like Yogendra Prabhu said, that they came at him with everything, and so he fought back pretty severely. I would hesitate to say that he was killed because of what happened in the past, because he was innocent, you know. So in any case, it does have to do our fall downs, and anyone who's engaged in this process, we will make mistakes, and we will be forgiven if we want that forgiveness. So don't be surprised if somehow or other, accidentally or however, there will be mistakes. I mean, unless you're very, very fortunate. There'll be mistakes. You can't help it. And you can help it, but I mean, it's difficult. And if you do, maybe you won't, but if you do make mistakes, just know that you will be forgiven. And you shouldn't oh, now it's over, it's finished, what's the point? No, the point is, this is one very, very important devotee. He was the GBC of the entire East Coast. Prabhu was very, very fond, is still very fond of this devotee. He preached and he had a temple where many of the major leaders at that time came out of that temple. You can go on down the list. As sannyasis, GBCs, people that are now gurus, you know, Paladananda Swami, Trivikram Swami, there was Bhagavan, there was Borjan, who does all these wonderful seminars. Tejas came from that temple. Mm-hmm. And there was, many devotees. Brahmapada came from that temple. So, Bhagavan. Yeah, I think it's Bhagavan. And Jagadish.
Mother Kanya Kumar is also, that was here for so long. Mother Kanya Kumar.
Yeah.
From Buffalo? I thought from Boston.
Oh, well, actually, Nityananda came from there.
Nityananda came from there.
And Jamajaya came from there. Jamajaya started Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Kirtananda came and preached with Bhagavatam, but then Rupanuga came down to Atlanta with Jamajaya and Taradasi, and they connected with Balavanta, and so Jamajaya was the first president for the first couple of years. And then he went to Tallahassee, and Balavanta became the president. He was president for about 3 or 4 years, and then there was a transition. So, yeah, so many people came from Buffalo. I mean, Pancharatna came from Buffalo.
Wow.
And it was, a major player in Mayapur. And so, this devotee who had...
and it's not that they were all from the city there, but that university.
No, going to that university, yeah. And so, what happened, he took sannyas, and then, he was really worried about his former wife, and he went back to her. And he's the kind of person that is so moral and so responsible that he was harder on himself than Prabhupada was. He couldn't forgive himself. Although he's still now practicing, he's very regulated, very staunch example of a Vaishnava. But, it haunted him that he had made this vow and it fell down. But Prabhupada said this. He said, failure is the pillar to success. That was in the letter. And that when you make this kind of mistake, you you now can preach with more enthusiasm because you know the pitfalls. And they say, like I had a broken finger once, and they told me that when it heals, the body sends extra calcium to fortify that part of the bone, and it becomes stronger than it was before the break. So if you make a mistake, and you get yourself up off the ground. Like I used to run track, and sometimes you got caught up in your own shoes, or somebody. A lot of times, what they would do, they catch you from behind. If they're coming up close and they can't quite reach you, they clip you with their cleat, the spikes in your ankle, and you go flying. If you get mad and then just lay there, what's the good? Even if you're going to lose, you get up and finish the race. You don't allow anything to stop you from your goal of finishing the race. No obstacle. One devotee once preached to me. He said, the path of Bhakti Yoga, it's a road. And you're going down the road, and all of a sudden there's a barrier. A tree fell down. You can't get, so instead of climbing over it or cutting the tree up, if you try to walk around it or, on either side, or you can't get past it, you just stay there. Or you turn around and try to go back, but you can't go back. Once you've gone down the path of Bhakti Yoga, you know too much. You're not going to be able to go back to where you were. So you're going to stay there at that spot until you find a way to pass over that obstacle. And that obstacle may be your inability to work with other people, or that obstacle may be, a trouble with getting up early in the morning, or it could be anything. Maya is very clever. She knows all the tricks, and she knows all our weak points. And she will find ways, just when you think you're doing great, look at it. She's got something for you. There'll be and it'll be very subtle. And I just pray that we all, including myself, we should pray for each other. I pray that we all have the intelligence and the fortitude, determination to overcome those tests because her job is to make sure that we're ready to go back. Because if we go back prematurely, it will be a disturbance. So, we're immature. And Prabhupada knew that, and he would be very forgiving to us. And so we should always take hope that no matter what happens, Krishna is very kind, the devotees are very kind, and there's I know this, there'll be no failures. Everyone who started this will succeed. That I guarantee. Everyone here is a success. You've already started and you will succeed.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Something else? Anything else? Okay then. Hare Krishna!
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Hare Ram.
Hare Ram.
Hare Ram.
Hare Ram.
Ram Ram. Hare Hare. So the big news is Ma Lakshmi and Haridwani are going to the holy Dham. Yeah. Whoa. What's up with that?
We're going to the holy.
Going to Mayapur.
I forgot to mention that.